Welcome. This is Astrology Insight Now, a weekly forecast program with astrology and other ways to help you make the most of your week and to heighten confidence for daily life. It's run by Pamela Cuccinell, that's me, the astrologer, and I invite you to find out more about my work at insightoasis.com. I look forward to your joining us every week. Please share with your friends, and here we go. September 29th, 2025. The moon is in the sign of Sagittarius in the wee hours. It goes void of course at 1:44 a.m. Eastern time. And when the moon's void of course, we say it's best not to begin anything new, work on things already in motion. Eastern time zone, a lot of people may be sleeping. And it enters the sign of Capricorn at 5:55 a.m. Okay, time to wake up, Eastern time zone people. At this point in time, that moon in Capricorn is basically buzzing us to get things done, make things happen, and really cook along in this waxing moon cycle. We are in a period of high productivity for the next couple of days. So if there's something you want to produce, make happen, do it. It's a wonderful time to be crystal clear of what it is you're aiming for and how you want to get there. Now, that being said, in the early morning, some of us may prefer to meditate, space out, feel a bit unsure of which steps we want to take first. That's all fine. You're basically incorporating dreamscape material into what is tangible and how you're going to move forward today. So use that. Use that as fodder. If you're questioning something that seemed very obvious a couple of days ago, well, it might be because something has come through that is giving you a sense of, maybe I have to do it this way or go in that direction. Maybe not. But what works best is to sit with it while we sift through and really understand. Think about when somebody throws a rock into a clear pond and it pulls up the sediment and suddenly we don't see all the things we had seen earlier before that rock went in. There is still a way to discern, find out, discover, but it usually takes waiting until we get there. Think about your favorite hound who used to jump into the water looking for that darn ball. And it doesn't help that everything's cloudy and the sense of smell is no longer available. What does help is when the pup sort of stops, takes a sense of where it was in space, looks around, maybe even waits until that water clears a little, and then boom, you can achieve that ball. So the important thing is to give yourself the time to let the waters clear so that you know what direction you're going. And then you can move with greater surety. I think another thing that can come up this morning is something may come in. It's almost like an anticipation thing. We wake up, we feel a bit expectant, especially the more hooked into intuition you are. We all have the ability. It's just some of us have worked on practicing to really highlight that more than others. So if you have that sense of anticipation, that back to the image of the dog, the ears go up and it's like something's out there. I smell something. Then wait until you can really discover what that is. And once you know that, then you can really take action in a way that's much more directed. So it's okay to be a little cloudy initially. You don't necessarily want to gulp down coffee and race into your day. You want to think, what am I sensing? What am I feeling? What may be coming up? And when you prepare yourself for that, even if there's nothing that's clear to you, take a little more time, pace yourself a little better, patient with yourself. You can get into that zone of being able to really take action by mid-morning. And this is a highly directed day, a strong day for moving forward in the way that you intend. The same holds true on Tuesday the 30th. The thing I want to mention about that is that as the day progresses, especially once we get into evening, some of us may feel as though, oh, okay, now that correspondence or this came up, or like we put things into action. We're moving forward. We're going in certain directions. But now we've got new material or new information, or something has presented itself that we have to either possibly juggle or bring into the conversation. We can choose not to. That certainly is an option. But what is valuable is to see really high productivity, being able to move with whatever the original intention was, whatever we're making happen. But in the evening, here's one way it may play out. Let's say you had your week scheduled and you thought you knew what was happening. And then come evening, you get information, oh, so and so can't make it, or can we reschedule, or what about this idea instead? And so it's valuable to work through that. And for some of us, it may just be, I think I'll just sleep on it. And actually sleeping on it, especially if you're in the Eastern time zone and you do tend to go to sleep 11 o'clock or before midnight, sleep on it may be the best solution for this particular being able to come to a conclusion or figure out where it needs to go. Because once we're in that dream state, then we can sift through, work through problems. Some people think sleep is a waste of time. This is so untrue. It, in the first place, is terrific for regenerating cells, your body, what needs to happen for you to have the energy in the following day. But it also is extremely valuable for what goes on in the mental, emotional, and unconscious realm. And one could also throw in spiritual, because when we're in the sleep state, we are in a place of being that allows us to tap into things that ordinarily we have orders up about, or we are so awake, we are not letting it in. And when we allow that process, and especially when we get savvy with what our personal dream symbols are, we can come to places of really being able to utilize the dream well for problem solve life when we're awake. So the moon goes void, of course, at 11:33 a.m. on Wednesday, the 1st of October, which my notes say Yom Kippur begins at sundown. So blessings for those who mark this time. And when we're in that morning, we are in this point of, again, very high productivity. So certainly if you want to get your work out of the way in the early part of the day, this is the time to do it. And it is tremendously productive and beneficial. The whole opening of the week really supports that. Actually, this week in general really supports the continued thrust of this lunar cycle, the waxing moon cycle. Last week, as you may recall, we had bumps. This week, we're kind of very open energy to move very decisively forward if we're quite clear on where we're going. So with that void of course moon from 11:33 a.m. until 3:52 p.m., this period is really wonderful for just working with things that you've already put into motion, finishing things up, getting poised for your next thrust. And that can occur when the moon enters Aquarius at 3:52 p.m. Now, this period of time, especially when we get at like 5 o'clock in the evening and we're into the evening hours, when we get past that point, we may really have worked through whatever it is we need to say, who we need to contact, how we need to broach a certain subject, work out all that kind of the niceties or the timing stuff, work all that out in the afternoon on Wednesday. Some of us, if it's an important conversation we need to have Wednesday evening or Thursday or even into Friday, we might role play with a coworker or a trusted friend. If this is a loaded conversation we're going to need to have over the next couple of days. And it can be, it can have to do with business. Maybe it's about a fundraising thing or some sort of negotiation that needs to happen. It might be something with a family member, a sensitive subject with a friend. All these things, when we work it through to a point of real objective perspective, is going to really, really make the argument, discussion, proposal incredibly powerful. But we may have to burn off some of the more impulsive or shoot from the hip things that might first occur to us. As people who listen to me regularly have heard me say many times, probably, we live in highly polarized times and times when people feel incredibly justified or incredibly right about whatever their perspective or point of view is. And the potential minefield for that is that we may not have all the information. And it all depends on what it is we're trying to do with that information. Where is it do we want to go? And I remember years ago when I was working with a relationship counselor, my husband and I, one of her favorite expressions, which always made us both smile, was, is it more important to be right or in the relationship? And part of the schism that's occurring at this point in time is the decision to be right is overruling relationship. And yet, here we are in the purported age of Aquarius. Pluto is in Aquarius. And Aquarius energetically is all about working with community and groups. It's different than the relationship orientation of Libra. Libra is an orientation that has to do with partnering, and Librans love to sound off ideas and work with trusted partners, see movies with friends. That's in its purity one of the things that's very definitive about a Libra. And Aquarius is sticks their toes in and out of different groups all the time. Networking groups, groups to associate with, groups for this and that community, or they might hole off and totally disengage from community. And yet community is what their greatest vision is. And one of my favorite realizations was about, I learned when I was in Massachusetts, the correct pronunciation is Thoreau, not Thoreau, the way a lot of people say the name of the writer, author, visionary. But he wrote all about being a person alone. Let me step to the music for which I alone hear. He was very much a person who loved to be in the woods and contemplate in his solitary existence. And yet, what I learned when I was actually at the pond where he lived forever and, for his time, and did many of his great writings every day, he'd walk into town or his mother's house for dinner to have his laundry done. He was totally dependent on community and his network, in spite of all the time he spent alone. So that was a long aside about Aquarius energy. But this is, okay, so Wednesday, late afternoon, all of Thursday into Friday the 3rd, when the moon goes void, of course, at 2:15 p.m., we have this lovely Aquarian energy that is about working with that struggle of the individual within community. And the struggle point may come up, as I said, late afternoon on Wednesday, perhaps that proposal or conversation we need to have, work it through, gain objectivity, talk to a mirror, see how things land. And the conversation indeed may be with yourself. Maybe it's not with a person or a boss or someone who you want to persuade to another way of thinking. But it's so valuable these days to come to points of greater objectivity, greater understanding, greater self-understanding. And as we do that, and yes, reflecting on the great writer Thoreau from Massachusetts and Walton Pond, the idea of being alone with one's thoughts in nature is particularly sustaining. But how do we interrelate with the wider community? And this is so important at this point in time because so many people feel islanded, divided in their separate camps. Can we learn to work together? Because if we can't, it's not going to go well for greater humanity. So it's very important in whatever dialogue you work with on a regular basis, on how you express yourself and reach and communicate with the other. We can do this through words, through writing, through art, through music, through dance, through how we move around the streets, in shops, Are we kind? Do we make eye contact? Do we connect to the other? Do we include the other into our greater vision of humanity? Or do we really see ourselves as separate? And this is a reckoning time for all of us. But on these days, I see a lot of potential for coming to understand things differently. If we can get out of our way, if we can get to that point of self-reflection. So Thursday the 2nd, tremendously productive day, really, really good for communication, for crossing aisles, for handshakes, for mending fences, perhaps literally with neighbors, family members, siblings. These are times when we can bridge gaps. And as I said, it may be gaps within even ourselves where we push certain parts of ourselves away. I work with this all the time as an astrologer. I'm not a therapeutic counselor, but or psychologist or anything like that. But when I view the planets, the sun and moon, as different pieces of the psyche, we are all born with this dance of the celestial bodies, and how they relate or don't relate with one another gives an astrologer a lot of information about what is easy for us to reconcile and what we push away. And the ideal as we work through self-knowing is to become more and more conscious of who we are and where we want to go, so that we are able to engage and not ostracize these pieces of the psyche within ourselves. Because it's really important to love yourself. I mentioned to a client just this week in the temples of Apollo in Greece, the words on the portal are "Know thyself." So thousands of years ago, this was an emphasis, because if you know yourself, really know yourself, then you know your foibles. You know who you are. You're not always projecting or putting blame or the bad person on someone else. You know when you've made a mistake. You own it. And you also know when you've done something wonderful and amazing, and you pat yourself on the back for it. Being self-critical is not always about knowing oneself. I mean, it's one thing to critique yourself and want to improve. It's another thing to pull yourself down on. So, okay, pep talk given. But I see this week as an incredibly empowering time for each of us. Remember, we're coming off that Virgo new moon solar eclipse, even though we're now in front of Libra time. So the Virgo new moon is about, how do I take care? How do I heal? How do I be the best I can be? How do I help? And how do I serve? And so these are all things we want to do for ourselves, for our community, for our loved ones, and for humanity. So beautiful days these can be, as long as you keep looking in the mirror and saying, okay, what can I shift? What can I adjust? How can I take ownership for this and move it in the direction that I want to move in? How can I communicate more effectively? Friday the 3rd, the moon goes void of course, 2:15 p.m. And it enters the sign of Pisces at 10:07 p.m. So once we're in mid-afternoon, let's chill. It's Friday. We've probably done good work this week, especially if we've been conscious about everything I talked about. And so it's important to take stock and look at where you're at. What direction is the boat headed? And maybe you can just drift for a while, sail, and just take a little relaxation time, tweaking time, modification time, perspective, the long view, all important to do. Once the moon enters the sign of Pisces, this is a beautiful weekend for creativity, meditation, regeneration, be by the water. That's something you love to do. Make art, listen to music, do the things that allow you to thrive, feel connected, feel a part of a whole. Very important, very healing to do that. So Friday evening, wonderful evening to just be with people you like to be with, stimulate your brain in ways you like to stimulate it, read, do things that allow you that sense of play and joy and spontaneity. Saturday, really delicious for anything really that has to do with what is fun for you, delightful, or restorative. Dance is very highlighted. Some people may want to literally dance, you dance, be in a group of people that feels like a dance, moving around, be somewhere where you're surrounded by colors, music, and even if you're in an ashram just chanting, or out in nature just watching the spectrum of colors that start to move through the northeast, or the changes, seasonal changes that happen wherever you are on the planet. They're out there. They just may not look in a textbook way that people think autumn looks like. And admittedly, for those south of the equator, it's a total different season. It's spring. On Sunday, the moon goes void, of course, at 8:30 p.m. Really, again, a wonderfully productive day, a day that can bring us a lot of news, a lot of restoration, a lot of support, a lot of wisdom is available on this day. Even if we don't really understand it all in the moment, sit with it, process it, allow it to feed you. We can get that almost through osmosis if we are in a space where we allow a certain perspective to enter in. It can shift how we view things. And then once the moon is void of course, it's void of course all evening. And in the sign of Pisces, that signifies a time to relax and restore. You have been listening to Astrology Insight Now. Please share with your friends. And if you'd like to make a donation, you can do so at astrologyinsightnow.com. Have a stellar week, and we hope to see you next time.